Hi, it's Sydney. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going over my reading log for March of 2023. First of all, I'm going to start with my Shonen Jump pile. Firstly, I have Spy Family Volume 9. This was a good read. Spy Family is pretty consistent, pretty standard so far. And next we have Kaguya-sama Love is War, number 25. Not sure how things are going in the direction in this arc right now. I know it's wrapping up in a few volumes, but I guess we'll see how this series ends. But I've enjoyed it up to this point. Next up, One Piece 102. Not much I can say about One Piece. I read it normally in the serialization and reread it when the volumes come out, and it's good. Wano is going really well right now. It seems to be getting close to an end in the serialization. At least in the serialization of the magazine, it ended a while ago, but in our English releases, it seems to be ending pretty soon. Next up, we have Ghost Reaper Girl Volume 4. This is the last volume that is currently out for Ghost Reaper Girl. It's on hiatus currently, which is unfortunate because it's getting really interesting with the way the plot's headed right now, but I guess we'll have to wait until the author is able to be in good health again to continue writing, which is an unfortunate truth of a lot of manga authors due to overworking. On a lighter note, we have Blue Box Volume 3. Absolutely love this. It's a great shonen romance. Very different from typical shonen romances. Not a lot of fan service. Feels more just wholesome in general. It's also got an interesting focus on sports. Next up, we have Ayashimon Volume 1. This is the first volume of the series by the creator of Hell's Paradise. Yuji Kaku, I believe is their name. Yes. I have not read Hell's Paradise. I read this. I enjoyed it somewhat. I can see why it got canceled at the third volume. Next up, we have Jujutsu Kaisen Volume 19. I don't want to say too much on this because it's pretty late into Jujutsu Kaisen, past where the anime is, and it's going to be pretty major spoilers. But the current arc, it was a little confusing in this book, but I enjoy it, I think. The art's a little difficult for me to transcribe a lot of the time, especially with the action scenes. Next we have Mashal Volume 11. Right now it's in a very action-focused arc, but it seems to be returning to some of the better humor that we fell in love with at the beginning of the series. And that is everything for the Shonen Jump pile. Now, I have a couple books from Shonen Sunday. I've got Helk Volume 2. This is a series my partner is picking up and I decided to read as well. I'm not super in love with it, but I want to see how things go. I think the first volume was a lot better of a read than the second volume, personally. Next up, from the Shonen Sunday pile, we have Mao Volume 10. I get Mao and Mashal confused sometimes. This is going pretty well so far. I'm getting more invested as it goes along, as more mysteries start to develop. It was a very slow start with this series. It kind of felt a bit like any other action series that the creator Takahashi wrote, which, if you know Takahashi, they've done Inuyasha, they've done Rinne, they've done Ranma, they've done a lot of things. But they tend, from what I can tell from people's opinions of them, they tend to do better with the rom-com series. But I'm enjoying now the more I read it. Next up, from the Viz Sig line, we have Fist of the North Star Volume 8. I really enjoy the art of this series. The story is not something I'm a huge fan of. The story's getting better as we go along, as we start to develop a more overarching goal. But from the beginning, it felt more like a Monster of the Week sort of thing. It kind of felt like there was no direction to the series, but it seems to be getting more interesting as it goes along. It's definitely, I feel like if I read it back when it first came out, before I was even alive, that it would have been a lot better because it really pioneered a lot of interesting things in the manga scene. Next up from Viz Sig, we have JoJo Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind Volume 7. Getting close to the end of this series. Can't go into too many details about it, but personally, I don't think I'm that big of a fan of Part 5. I tend to prefer Part 6, Part 2, and Part 4 over Part 3 and Part 5. But it's still good so far. I think this This current volume was better than a lot of the other ones. The story's getting a lot more interesting. Alright, next up we have Alice in Borderland Volume 5. This is a series by the current creator of Zom 100. It's a death game series. My partner is picking it up, but I'm also reading it. I usually don't read death games because I don't like to read things that I feel can be a bit edgy, but I enjoy this one. This volume in particular got very interesting. A lot of cool things happened in it. Not going into a lot of detail because I want to avoid spoiling things for people who are just watching this not expecting spoilers. Next up we have another first volume of the Viz Sig series. This is Insomniac's After School Volume 1. Now for this series, it's really beautiful. I like the art a lot. I need to see how it goes because there's not a big hook in it currently. It seems to just kind of be something starting up. But I want to see after the next couple volumes how I feel about it then. And the last series from the Viz Sig line, we have Beast Complex Volume 2. This is just short stories in the universe of Beastars. It's always a fun read. It's nothing too complicated or nothing that requires a lot of commitment because they're all individual stories. Some tie back into Beastars. Probably be good to finish reading Beastars before you read this volume. There are some minor spoilers for the end of Beastars in this volume. Next up, we have Kodansha with Shonen Note Volume 2. I really love this series. The author has a great way of creating these beautiful landscapes out of ideas and thoughts and sounds that go on in the story. And it's mainly about a young boy discovering his talent for singing and joining a choir, potentially an opera, a lot of things surrounding his singing skills. I have heard that it gets pretty sad near the end, so that's something to be wary of if you don't like sad stories, but it's 9 volumes completed. Of course, we only have 2 volumes right now in English. Next up, we have In the Clear Moonlit Dusk, Volume 3. Love this series. Super pretty art, like gorgeous, gorgeous art. Really sweet romance between a character who is a girl that dresses and looks a lot like a boy, so she's not used to being complimented, and a very handsome, very popular boy in her school who sees her as the girl that she feels she is, and really embraces that, and is making her feel better about herself through his affection for her. Really, really fun romance so far. Would recommend it in a heartbeat. Next up, we have the 1 volume, A Home Far Away. Extremely depressing. Made me cry. Graphic. Very dark. Very homophobic. But exploring the homophobia. Not in a bad way. I would definitely recommend it if you can handle homophobia and if you can handle very depressing themes in stories. Next up from Kodansha, we have A Condition Called Love 2. I'm enjoying this so far. I'm not super in love with it like everybody else seems to be. It was recommended to me by a friend, and I want to keep reading it and see how things develop between the 2 leads. Nothing too remarkable or stand out about it so far, though. Next up, we have The Abandoned Empress, Volume 4. This one, we're getting decently deep into the political drama, and going over too many of the details would start getting spoilers. But with this one, it's one that I was slow on at first, but I'm starting to like it the more it goes along. So next up, we have Coffee Moon Volume 2. Can't tell if that's upside down. That's not upside down. This is a series kind of in the vein of Groundhog Day, character reliving events going on, reliving the same day going on and on. The first volume left off with a cliffhanger that got expanded upon in this volume, and then this volume ended with even more questions than the first volume. It's really good. I would recommend it. Next up from Yen Press, we have Shy Volume 2, a series about a shy superhero, learning how to become less shy and learning to embrace her powers. It's good so far. A mystery starting to develop, which is not something I was expecting, but I am welcome to mysteries helping improve the pacing of the story. Speaking of mysteries, next up is Shadow's House 3. This series is just a whole bunch of mysteries all together in one. The first volume was alright, and it gets better, a lot better from the second volume, and then even better from the third volume, exploring a lot of the characters and their interactions with each other. Gist of this story, if you don't know about it, is these shadows have people called living dolls, and they basically act as their faces because the shadows have no face. So they train these living dolls to basically emote for them, while the shadows do everything else. Very interesting. It's got an anime out, and the anime came out, I think, a few years ago, definitely before the manga. Next up is Touring After the Apocalypse, Volume 2. Now, I enjoy this series. I was expecting a lot more slow-paced, post-apocalypse, exploring the world, taking pictures, but it started getting a little more action-focused in the second volume, so I'm not sure how the series is going to progress from this point. I don't dislike it, though. I do enjoy how the series is going. Unlike that, I have Monster Boo Volume 3, which I honestly was not a big fan of. The plot just kind of got lost after the second volume, and I'm pretty sure the next volume's the last one, so that kind of explains why things kind of seem to just be petering out in terms of my enjoyment of it. Next up, we have the Seven Seas series, starting with My Dear Friend Nokotan 3. This is just a cute gag comic series. Nothing too spectacular or interesting in this volume. I think we added a new character to the cast, but it's pretty much just standard gag comedy. It's enjoyable. It's nothing I would go crazy over, though. Next up is Kageki Shoujo Volume 8. As opposed to that one, I absolutely love Kageki Shoujo. It's very interesting. It's probably my favorite shoujo, even though it technically became a seinen at some point, I believe, because the magazine switched publication. Regardless, it's a great series about the Takarazaka Review and this young girl discovering her talent for it. And the last volume left off on a very depressing cliffhanger that fortunately didn't turn out to be as depressing in this volume, but definitely would recommend this in a heartbeat. Next up, we have Otaku Elf Volume 4. This just started getting an anime this season about an elf that's an otaku, a bit of a shut-in, and her adventures with her shrine maiden. It's good. It's nothing too spectacular. It's funny. It's got some good references in it. Got some good character growth, but if you're going into it expecting a super deep story, you probably shouldn't. It's pretty lighthearted, slice of life vibes. Speaking of, we have Ex Yakuza and Stray Kitten 2, a series about a stray kitten adopted by somebody who used to be in the Yakuza and is now running a cat cafe. This volume, pretty much the same as the first, just going into more detail about the residents of the cat cafe and exploring their personalities against each other. It's good. It's a fun read. A lot of these 7Cs are pretty lighthearted reads. Then we have Correspondence from the End of the Universe, Volume 2. I really like this series. I'm sad that it's only going to be a few more volumes before it finishes. I don't remember exactly how many, but I know it finished in Japan at less than 10 volumes. I'm thinking maybe 5. A story about a guy who basically gets sent up into space for 10 years unexpectedly, because apparently in this universe everybody's expected to do 10 years of service and creating new planets. So it's a very interesting premise, and we get to see how his character develops in that scenario. Second volume kind of explores him accepting his fate and working to create planets. Next up, we have The 100 Girlfriends Who Really, 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 Really Love You, Volume 5. Very ridiculous, off-the-walls harem comedy with a main character that was rejected 100 times, and because of that, he goes to pray at a shrine to find love, and it turns out there was a mistake, so he accidentally ends up getting 100 soulmates, and if he doesn't date every one of them, if he rejects even one of them, they will die. So he's going to end up with 100 girlfriends at the end of the series, I'm sure. I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but it's great fun so far. I don't remember exactly the events of this volume because it's been a long time since I read it, but this does have the infamous panel where it's 2 pages straight of just pure dialogue of the main character saying how much he loves each of his girlfriends. It's wholesome, but very ecchi. So, viewer discretion is advised, I'm sure, so don't read this series if you're underaged. Next up, we have 2.5 Dimensional Seduction Volume 5. This is a series exploring a main character who is only attracted to 2D girls and finds a girl that joins his anime club that is a cosplayer, or wants to become a cosplayer, and cosplays a character that he has a huge crush on, so he starts to develop feelings for her. And this is kind of a series exploring him helping her through learning how to become a better cosplayer and helping her be a better friend and her helping him get out of his shell. Very similar to My Dress Up Darling, but a little more ecchi. But I think they're pretty comparable in terms of quality, honestly. They're both great series that I recommend, but just be warned of the ecchi scenes. Next up, we have Yokai Cats 3. This is just a small 4-coma series featuring different yokai as cats. It's cute. It's a good, fun time. It is $15, so it's a bit of an investment, but it's an enjoyable read. It'll be a short read, but an enjoyable one. Next up, we have The Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation, the graphic novel, Volume 1. This is a manhwa adaptation of the danme of the same name that I've heard so many good things about and has been a great seller over here in the States. I was waiting till a graphic novel came out to check out the series. There's really not a lot of romance in this first volume. I've heard that these are very slow burn romances, but the plot's very interesting because I have not read any of these cultivation subgenre series before, so I'm invested in the plot pretty much so far. The main thing with the plot is that it's a character who essentially sacrifices himself to curse his family because his family has treated him so poorly. So he is possessed by the spirit of an ancient cultivator? I don't know the terms. An ancient cultivator that is extremely powerful and takes revenge on his family for him and is kind of living in his life from now on as payment. I probably got that description completely wrong, but it's been a while since I've read it. So lastly, from the new releases this month, we have I Didn't Mean to Fall in Love. Very, very good BL series. It's very, very raunchy. The first couple pages is already adult only. It's really good. It's about I think 30... How old is he? It's a series about a 30-year-old virgin. I assume I can say that word without too many repercussions. And he is basically trying to find someone to have relations with. And he accidentally falls in love with that person. And it explores his feelings and the other person's feelings for that relationship. Very good, very raunchy, but it was super sweet. Lastly, we have the series that I binged this month. This is me just trying to catch up on older releases that I hadn't read yet, or things that I picked up on a whim. So first of all, we have Murder Princess 1 and 2 by Broccoli Books, out-of-print publisher, out-of-print series. It was mediocre? I don't really have anything too special to say about it. I'm just keeping it because I think the spines are nice, but it's not worth reading, honestly. But we do have BL Metamorphosis, which I read volumes 1 through 5. I loved it. The ending was very sad. I was not a fan of the ending, but I did enjoy everything else about it. It's a young girl and an older woman who discovers BL and starts talking with this younger high school girl about it, and they form a very close, friendly relationship between each other. It's very, very wholesome and sweet. It's got a drama out in Japan that I'd like to watch, but I don't know of any official ways to watch it. Next, we have a one-off, The Seven Little Sons of the Dragon. This is by Ryoko Kui. I believe that's his name? Yes. Ryoko Kui, the creator of Delicious in Dungeon, which is a really fun adventure series set in a dungeon and involves a lot of cooking. This is just 7 one-shots. very fun one-shots, very interesting writing style. It's a great read, honestly. Next we have Pretty Boy Detective Club. I read volumes 1 and 2. This is sort of a parody of the mystery series in Japan called Boys Detective Club. If you don't know about the series, or you don't know any of the plot points, you're going to miss out on some of the references in this book. I know I did, because I hadn't even heard of the series prior to reading this. But it's still a very enjoyable read. I believe it should have one more volume coming out in English at some point. There were 5 volumes, and these are 2-in-1s, and I only read 2 of them. But I've tried looking, and I cannot find for the life of me when the 5th volume / the 3rd volume would ever be published in English, because I think this is finished in Japan, but my research was pretty inconclusive. Next up, I read High Score Girl 1 through 7. I won this in a giveaway thanks to Manga Alerts on Twitter. I enjoy this series. I'm not a huge fan of the art, but the dynamic between the 2 main characters is really interesting and fun. It's just 2 kids who are being kids and not being mature about things, kind of maturing and discovering their feelings for each other through the art of fighting games. And the fighting game references are just great. I don't even play fighting games, but I loved a lot of the references they made in it. Next up, I read volumes 1 and 2 of Wolf's Reign. It's a series about wolves that turn into humans and are being hunted down. I don't remember too many of the plot details about this. To be honest, I was not a fan of the manga personally. I bought it for my partner and wanted to read it just because I thought it would be a fun read. I was kind of let down by it, honestly, but I've heard the anime is good, so maybe at some point I'll check out the anime. Next up, I read volumes 8 through 15 of March and Awakens Romance. I really enjoyed it, but to be fair, it is the most cookie-cutter shonen there could be. It's very by the numbers, but it's a very, very good by the numbers shonen. So I really want to read Flame of Recca, which is another series by this author that's like 34 volumes. So that's going to be more of a commitment, but this is a good series. I would definitely recommend to check it out if you can find it, since it's out of print right now. Next up, I read Kenka Bancho Otome, volumes 1 and 2. I heard somebody say this is a good series. I was not that enthralled with it. Then again, I don't typically like delinquent characters, and this is basically all delinquent characters. So it's not particularly in my wheelhouse, but it's 2 volumes. It wasn't that much of a commitment, and I didn't hate it. It was kind of mediocre to me personally. Next up, we have Takane and Hana Volume 1. I got this volume and decided to read it to see if I would like the series. It's about a young girl who has to sit in for an arranged marriage for her older sister, because her older sister does not want to be married. So she sits in for the arranged marriage and basically messes up the entire arranged marriage sit-in. And it's about her and this older man who I think they're going to slowly discover feelings for each other, even though at first they're very oil and water, very harsh opposites. The only issue with this series, of course, is that it's a very big age gap. I think, I don't remember exactly how big of an age gap. I know Takane is in his 20s and Hana is in high school. So if you can look past that, I would definitely recommend reading this, even though I've only read the first volume. I'm looking forward to reading the rest when I get it. Next up, we have Honey Hunt, volumes 1 through 6. This is by Miki Aihara, the creator of Hot Gimmick and Tokyo Boys and Girls. Now, I really enjoyed this series, but it is on hiatus. It's been on hiatus since, I think, 2010 at 6 volumes, and the author does not seem to be continuing it anytime soon. It ends off on the first arc of this series, but I have no idea if it's ever going to pick up again. I really enjoyed this read. It's about a young girl who is the daughter of an actress and a musician. They're very distant from her. She doesn't grow up with a lot of familial love. And it turns out one day they're getting divorced. So she basically shouts out at cameras because her house is swarmed by paparazzi, and she discovers she wants to make it on her own as an actress. to prove her mother that she has talent and that she is worth something, because her mother is frankly a terrible person. It's very high drama. It's a very enjoyable read, but if you read it, be prepared to know that it might not ever be finished. The last series today I'm covering is Absolute Boyfriend, volumes 1 through 6. This is about a girl who is very cruelly rejected by a guy she had a crush on, and she decides on a whim one day to go to this sketchy website and order a life-size figure of a man, and it kind of works like a robot. She gives it a kiss, and that figure is committed to her and in love with her. And it's basically her seeing if she wants to develop a relationship with this living, talking figure, which acts like a normal person that's just very committed to her, or if she wants to explore other options in her life. It's only 6 volumes. It's a really great, really fun read. The ending is kind of weird. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but it's by a very renowned artist, an author, Yu Watase, also known for the Fushigi Yugi series. Wow, this is a little hard to read the spine on this when I have it mirrored like that. Anyways, Yu Watase wrote Fushigi Yugi. She wrote Imadoki. She's written a lot of series. She's a very acclaimed author. This is, I think, her only pure romance work, the only one that I know of. I enjoyed it, and I'm starting to collect her other series as well. But with that in mind, that is all of the books that I read in March of 2023. So thank you for tuning in with me and sitting through my antics, and I really hope to see the rest of y'all in the next video. So have a good one.